Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Sherilyn, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. Um, as Sherilyn stated, my name is Fran George, and I currently serve as a program manager for Georgia State Adoption Exchange. I've been in this position for about 9 years. I think November will make 9 years. And one of the things, every month for the past several years, I have to provide data to my director, Deborah Burris, regarding children who are without an identified resource. And so not only do I see the numbers, I also see the names. So every time a young person's plan, we're notified that a young person's plan changes to APLA, I cringe. So for my action research project, I wanted to take a look at what our efforts are around children, whose goal have been changed to APLA, and also children who are currently on hold. And in Georgia, we use the term on hold and not ready interchangeably. And these are kids who we've halted recruitment efforts for whatever reason, typically because they're experiencing some placement instability or they're requiring stabilization, usually through hospitalization. Prior to the shutdown, our state adoption director, Deborah Burrs, who's also my mentor, as you all may know, she convened a series of meetings around the state. We traveled to different regions throughout the state and engaged a frontline adoption case managers, supervisors, regional and county leadership. We also included some resource development staff, and these are the staff who's tasked with the recruitment, training, and developing and supporting of foster and adoptive homes. So she wanted to just have some in-person, intimate conversations with the field staff around challenges they were experiencing. So she coined the meetings Adoption Cafe 24, and we also were able to take advantage of some coffee and donuts as a part of those meetings. So we divided into 3 groups, and one of the groups focused on children who were without an identified resource. And that was the group I was responsible for. And one of the questions that was posed in that group were, what are your challenges around child-specific recruitment? And on this slide, I just list some of the things that came out of those meetings. Lack of specialization, not having case management staff who can focus on those adoption-specific tasks, lack of training, staff turnover and shortages, and I think that's probably an issue, across the country. Workload demands and competing priorities. We have a lot of initiatives in Georgia, and sometimes it's like, okay, who do I answer to first? Which thing do I tackle first? Inconsistent collaboration between adoption and resource development staff. And one of the things, and I'll just add this here, we've done to sort of address that. A little over a year ago, since everybody was virtual and we weren't able to really have any in-person meetings, we started convening with adoption staff and resource development staff twice a month to present children. So it gave us an opportunity to engage with resource development staff for them to understand who the children are and for us to just collaborate and try and make matches within our own resources. The last bullet I added, it didn't necessarily come out of the adoption cafes that we did around the state, but it's just something I see so often. Recruitment is contingent upon placement stability. Had a case that I took a look at where the case manager advocated for several months up until the point termination of parental rights was granted, just advocated for TPR. And literally a few days after TPR was granted, she documented in the case record, the youth was not ready for recruitment because he wasn't stable. And I was like, huh? So, things like that. And, and I tell my team, when you see something, say something. And so I think this whole action research project has been okay, you see something, now it's time to say something and do something about it. If case managers of specified regions where there have been limited recruitment efforts for older youth aged 13 to 17 years old receive tailored training, guidance through coaching, and access to information sharing in an online space that provides ongoing updates resources and information regarding placements of older children? Will it lead to a decrease in the number of children placed on hold, and will it increase efforts to match the youth with adopted families more timely? Okay, so the process I used for my ARP was literature review. I completed a review of a sample of cases. I conducted a training that addressed issues and trends that were identified via the case record review. And then I conducted coaching and guidance sessions with some field staff regarding the utilization of the child-specific recruitment plan. I took a look at an article, and I think, Brandy, you actually referenced this article in your presentation yesterday. It was published in Child Trends, and it just spoke to, it was about supporting youth who age out of care, supporting older youth after age 18. And it, we all are aware of this. So older youth who age out of foster care are at increased risk for several adverse adult outcomes, including homelessness, high unemployment rates, low educational attainment, and early or unintended pregnancies. I also took a look at a report by Hornsby Zeller. They did a report for the state of Ohio about promising practices in child-specific recruitment. And the first three bullets are my takeaways from that report. You have to believe the children are adoptable and you can find homes for them. It's critical to have staff who want to do the work and believe that youth are deserving of forever families, and that it's possible. I reflect on a time when I was an adoption administrator in Fulton County, which is one of the largest counties, well, the largest county in Metro Atlanta. I had a case manager say, this boy is never going to be adopted. My response to him was, well, yeah, he probably won't if that's your line of thinking. So, we worked with him, to help change his mindset. Me, his supervisor, and we had a state adoption consultant who worked with us really closely on our cases. And eventually we saw the shift, and Abdul was able to finally find a permanent family. And I always laughed because our consultant was like, I can't retire until Abdul has a family. So as soon as Abdul got his family, she did just that. She retired. So I always chuckle when I think back to that case. Know the youth and prepare them for adoption and recruitment. Preparation is the key in anything we do. We have to know our kids. We have to know what it is they want. We have to want to know what they want too. I know sometimes as adults, we think we know what's best, but that youth voice is so important. And in the Hornsby Zeller report, there was a county in Ohio that actually conducted adoption preparation groups for children age 5 and older. So that's definitely something I would like to see us implement in Georgia. Be planful. The saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, it's important to utilize everyone connected to the youth to develop a specific plan for that youth. It's important that the youth has a team of people committed to working on his or her behalf. And the last bullet was involve the youth in selection and implementation of recruitment strategies. Again, asking the youth what they want. Child-specific recruitment is not one size fits all. It's individualized for a reason. Getting that youth voice is, and I can't say that enough, it's extremely important. So for my case review process, Georgia is a state-administered, county-ran child welfare system. We have 159 counties, which comprise 14 regions. And then those 14 regions make up 3 districts. We have a North District, South District, and then Metro Districts, which is 2 regions that make up the metropolitan Atlanta area. So for the case reviews, I wanted to focus on 1 region from the North District, 1 from the South District, and then the Metro District, the 2 regions that make up the Metro District. So it was a total of 4 regions that I wanted to focus on. So 40 cases were identified. 8 of those cases were excluded. 7 were excluded because they were coded incorrectly in our SACWA system. And then the 1 case, the plan had not been approved by the court. So that case was excluded. So that left us with 32 cases that met the inclusion criteria. 23 applicant cases and then 9 cases of youth who were on hold for recruitment efforts at that particular time. So, and on this slide it shows the case practice guidelines that we looked for and I say I had 2 peers that helped review a few of the cases because when I realized how much work and how long some of the kids had been free for adoption, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, by the deadline. So I did get a little help with this. One of the things we looked at was identity and life book work done, and only 6% of those cases was their actual life book work completed with the youth. Was the youth engaged around what type of family they wanted? In 53% of the cases, the youth were engaged and there were discussions with youth about what type of family. And even in some cases, when I think sometimes our kids are very prescriptive about the kind of family they wanted. And in my opinion, I think sometimes that's their way of saying no, because I know there's no way you can find, this exact family that I'm asking for. So, also just working with staff to kind of unpack that and help, push back and challenge some of that. Were there child-specific recruitment activities? Did they attend adoption parties? Did they attend matching events? And in 47% of the cases, this happened. Was the child registered with the state and national photo listing? In half of the cases, 50%, this actually occurred. And this was a big shocker. Was the child-specific recruitment plan completed? And in none of the cases that we reviewed was there a child-specific recruitment plan. So certainly, definitely, there's an opportunity exists right there. So, it got me to thinking, okay, what can we do at the state level to influence this work? Record mining. Was the record mined for past connections, current connections? And 16% of the cases, record mining, it was documented that record mining had occurred. And then the last, the last one was if the youth said no to adoption, if there was some resistance to adoption, were there any interventions put in place to address that resistance? And usually, we typically look to the therapist to help us work through those things. And in only 22% of those cases did that happen. And the next 2 slides, it was just information that I was curious about. And I only looked at the applications for the next 2 slides. What was the length of time between termination of parental rights and child life history registration? And that time frame was 8 months. And our policy in Georgia requires that it happens within, 30 days of termination of parental rights or 60 days of voluntary surrender. So it's definitely a large gap there. The length of time between termination of parental rights and photo listing registration, 17 months. Our policy requires 30 days in Georgia. And the length of time between TPR and the change of the goal to APLA was 38 months, so just over 3 years. The average age at the time of TPR was 13 years old, which creates a greater sense of urgency because in Georgia, at 14, a child must legally consent to TPR. And this was eye-opening for me as well. The previously adopted, 25% of the cases that were reviewed, the youth had been previously adopted. And then the average number of placement moves was 13. And this last slide is just looking at the placement type that the youth had at the time the goal was changed. And 39% were in child care and institutions or group homes. 43% were in foster homes, 9% in psychiatric residential treatment facilities, and then 9% were in relative placements. So, and this was surprising to me because I thought that the higher percentage would be children who were in congregate care and not children who were in family-like settings. So that was a surprise to me in looking at that. So the third thing in my action research project process was to conduct a training. And so the biggest deficit from the data review was the lack of child-specific recruitment plans. So the training was centered around child-specific recruitment. The objectives were the law and policy regarding child-specific recruitment, the child-specific recruitment plan itself, evidence-based strategies and other recruitment strategies for achieving permanency, and also incorporating the youth's voice. The training was 90 minutes long and included, in addition to content delivery, we looked at, we did some poll questions, and we also had a breakout session where the participants were able to actually complete a child-specific recruitment plan based on a scenario that was provided, which had a total of 43 participants that participated in the training, which included case managers, supervisors, county leadership, and state adoption staff. So that pre and post test. So this just shows that there was a significant gain in knowledge from the pre to post test. There was a mean increase by 3.3%. 33 participants completed the pre-test, and then we only had 28 that actually followed through and completed the post test. So this slide just looks at some of the questions, the responses to some of the questions that were on the pre and post test. The first set of columns, it related to our policy around how often the child-specific recruitment plan should be updated. The correct answer was false. And so initially 18.8% got it correct. And then, on the post test, 61.5% got it correct. The second column was related to the ASFA, which is the statute that requires us to conduct child-specific recruitment, and 78.1% got it correct on the pre-test, and that increased 84.6% on the post-test. Now, the last four columns, it was kind of tricky. It was a multiple choice question, and actually they were supposed, all four of the answers were actually correct. So there was an increase with photo listings and televised videos actually scoring the same on the pre and post test. And the first three columns were a multiple choice question related to ASFA and MIPA, the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act and Adoption and Safe Families Act. So fostering connections was not a correct answer. So we missed the mark because more people chose that as the correct answer on the post test, and that actually should have decreased on that particular question. So we did see an increase in the correct answers for ASFA and MIPA, 34.4% on the pre-test, then 46.2% on the post-test for the ASFA question. And then for MIPA, 71.9%, and it increased to 76.9%. The last question on this, well, the last set of bars on this slide was related to our policy around child life history registration. And again, we went from 28.1% got it correct on the pre-test, and 73.1% got it correct on the post-test. Okay, so the first five columns were related to, it was a multiple choice question where the participants were supposed to select which one of these strategies were evidence-based. So with America's Kids Belong, it should have decreased because that was not an evidence-based strategy. Went from 43.8% to 30.8%. So Wendy's Wonderful Kids and Extreme Recruitment are evidence-based. So the increase is what we wanted to see there. Wendy's Wonderful Kids went from 78.1% to 88.5%. Extreme Recruitment had the biggest gain from 34.4% on the pre-test to 84.6% on the post-test. And that last column was just related to the acronym for get the engaged model for engaging youth in planning for their permanency. And it should have increased, which it did, 31.3% to 65.4% on the post-test. And in addition to the pre and post-test, we also did a survey. We wanted the participants to rate their level of knowledge in certain areas. And we just focused on the high ratings before and after the pre and post test. What does it take to conduct effective child-specific recruitment? So 28% of the participants rated their level of knowledge high before the training, and then that increased to 83.3% rating their level of knowledge high after the training. The impact of placing children on hold, we talked about, what happens, if you place a child on hold, because typically in what I see is once placing a child on hold is always a precursor to going to court and asking that the plan be changed to APA. So the high level of knowledge before was 40%. That increased to 79.2% after the training. What does it take to identify adoptive families and increase the timeliness of matching youth with adoptive families? 37.5% rated their level of knowledge as high before, with 73.9% rating their level of knowledge as high after the training. And then we rating their level of knowledge, our policy section regarding child-specific recruitment efforts. 32% rated their level of knowledge as high before the training, and 79.2% rated their level of knowledge as high following the training. Okay, so we also ask staff to rate their level of knowledge about how to complete the child life history registration, and that increased from 60% to 79%. How do you go about preparing a youth for permanency? Level of knowledge was high for 48% of the participants before the training. That increased to 79.2% after the training. How to complete photo listing registration. 44% rated their level of knowledge high before the training, 71% high after the training. So the extreme recruitment, 8% rated their level of knowledge high before the training. That increased to 56.5% after the training. Wendy's Wonderful Kids, 40% rated their level of knowledge high before the training, 68.2% high after the training. The Engage model, 4% rated their level of knowledge high before the training, and then that increased to 67.7% after the training. And then the last one, how to ensure that youth voice is included in permanency planning and preparation. 40% rated their level of knowledge high before the training, and that increased to 79.2% after the training. So the last survey question was, we asked the participants about their level of satisfaction with the information provided during the training, and 76% rated their level of satisfaction is very satisfied, and then 24% satisfied. I think there were a total of 25 respondents. And just so you know, very satisfied and satisfied were not the only options, and the survey was not rigged in my favor, in case you were wondering. So participants did have the option of indicating dissatisfaction with the survey as well. So the last part of my process was to conduct sessions with the field staff regarding completion of the child-specific recruitment plan. So I conducted a total of 3 sessions. And this kind of helped us move from the compliance to understanding the importance of the plan. The sessions were 1 hour in length, and staff were asked to select the youth that they wanted to focus on. And the goals of the session were to provide support and guidance, brainstorm with the county staff about what recruitment activities could be conducted, and then walk away with a completed child-specific recruitment plan for the selected youth. And these are some quotes that, because I solicited feedback from the participants, and these are some of the quotes that I got in response to that request. We must continue to engage the child more in discussions around permanency, especially the older children and those that are hard to place. And this just emphasizes the importance of incorporating the youth's voice. We can utilize various recruitment tools, activities tools simultaneously. We must work concurrently instead of sequentially. A lot of times we just kind of like do things in ABC order as opposed to just looking at, okay, how many of these things can we do at the same time? We must also have periodic staffing roundtables to assess progress. And, lack of follow-up is our Achilles heel. It's nothing to have this nice, thorough, comprehensive plan if you don't follow up on the things that you've committed to doing in that plan. Okay, so this is pretty lengthy, but I really appreciated this feedback from one of the supervisors. The meeting reiterated to me how important it is to remain objective when reviewing studies for possible adoptive matches. It helped me to think back to some preconceived notions that I may have had about what Mitchell's long-term needs are and what type of parent can best meet those needs. Engaging in the child-specific recruitment plan meeting gives me a new avenue to take when it comes to recruitment planning for children who need resources. There is a real value in meeting as a team and discussing a child's case and being open to others' ideas, thoughts, and opinions. I think the more team players are working together on behalf of a child, the better the possible outcomes are for him and her. And I think this just reinforces the importance of the plan and developing a team to work on the youth's behalf. So in conclusion, as the data show, there are multiple opportunities that exist in the areas of child preparation and also in child recruitment in general. And, these are things that, I, can influence at my level. So certainly, there's more to come in those areas. And the deficits were not specific to a particular region of the state. I wanted to do a cross-section to just kind of see if, maybe, they're doing really bad in this particular region or not so well in this region. But just based on the data for those regions that were included, the deficits were not specific to any one particular region. And the intervention was effective in increasing staff knowledge around policy and practice, as evidenced by the pre and post test from the training. So moving forward, because I did reference the online workspace in my PICO. So we're going to start a softball team in Georgia, and it's the state office and field teams becoming adoption leaders and learners. And we're planning to launch it via Slack. And if that doesn't work, we'll have to seek out some other online platform. Ongoing training and support for the field to address opportunities identified in the data collection, so things that we identified in the case review. And redesign of the child-specific recruitment plan. One of my takeaways during the coaching and guidance sessions was that the plan is not user-friendly in its current state. So we'll be working to redesign that and eventually have it put into our SACWA system, because I feel like there's a lot of information on that plan. If it were in our SACWAs, it could be pre-populated, thus increase the likelihood of staff wanting to, staff completing the actual plan. So the MPLD impact certainly has been a catalyst for shifting how I lead my team and approach my work. Arlene, our individual coaching sessions, I really appreciate the insight you provided during those sessions. I pride myself on being intentional, but those sessions help me, maybe Fran, you need to be a little more intentional about being intentional. So in some of the things you suggested during our sessions, I've already implemented with my team. So thank you, Arlene, for you pushed when I needed it and you didn't let me off the hook, especially about that question, what's next? So I certainly appreciate everything you gave to me during those sessions. I'm gonna go out of order. Sherilyn, you've motivated me to use what I've gained to continue doing the work. That training I did in June was just a start. So, there's certainly more to come. Actually excited about it and looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your patience and your understanding. Did I say thank you for your patience? Because some days I felt like I was sitting in the principal's office, but, it was a wonderful experience, The guidance and support you provided is something I won't soon forget. Iron sharpening iron, agents of change. Our group coaching sessions were the epitome of iron sharpening iron. I learned so much from you all. We had the quotes from Ricardo, the many sermons, we've bridged miles and we've shared our vision. So now let's take what we've gained through this experience and make the change, create the change needed. And last, but definitely not least, my mentor, Deborah Burris. Thank you for all of your support and guidance throughout the program, from the frequent check-ins to our dedicated monthly mentoring sessions. She was determined that this experience gave me everything it was supposed to give, and I'm all the better for it. Thank you, Deborah.